Dr. Erick Pathinvo is a distinguished executive, strategist, and a consultant with over 2 decades of experience. His multidisciplinary expertise spans ICT, cybersecurity, AI, and strategic business leadership. He is an indispensable asset for global corporations, helping them achieve digital transformation and sustainable growth. Please welcome Dr. Erick Franck Y. Pathinvo.
Right, so Dr. Erick, over to you, so you can then introduce the panelists themselves, or you can let them do that themselves, but we have 30 minutes. Over to you now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Adeyemi. Dear panelists, welcome on board. I hope Cheryl is in, and Fabrice online?
Absolutely.
Okay. Is the Souza online?
Yes, I'm here, Erick.
Great. So I think I heard everyone. So thank you very much being on board, and I'll go straight to the point as we are short of time. So our topic discussion is about resourcefulness, self-resourcefulness, and organizational resourcefulness. So the question will be, from your point of view, what could be your comprehension of self-resourcefulness?
And please introduce yourself as well.
Good. As has been done already, I am Franck Pathinvo, PhD holder in different subjects, IT and management, and also in language. I have a PhD in translation studies too. So I have more than 20 years as experiences in the working field in terms of, counseling companies and in leadership too. And so I'll be the one monitoring the discussion to avoid time consumption, and helping all my panelists to be able to delivering. So my question is launched, but the first person I would like to react about the question will be Cheryl, to give us a point of view or her understanding of what is resourcefulness, and what is her comprehension of that side for an organization. Is Cheryl Jacob online, please?
Yes, I am. I was struggling to unmute.
Okay.
Hello, my name is Cheryl Jacob. It's very nice to be here. Thank you for the invitation. Around a company called Reasonate. It's a collective, a consultancy collective based in South Africa, but we do work across the continent, and we work particularly with social entrepreneurs. To answer the question, I think when I think about resourcefulness, I actually think about agency. I think a lot of the times we in South Africa, we have this saying that a lot of us just walk around with our hands like this, just waiting for a handout, waiting for somebody else to do something for you. And I think that when I think about resourcefulness, I'm really thinking about agency and how we tapping into that ability that we all have been when we're born, we all kind of loaded with a success mechanism. Whether you're a bird or an ant, or whether you're a human being, you have success wired inside of you. And I think that a lot of the times, just given our history and the different situations we go through, we lose little bits of our agency. We lose a little bit of our resourcefulness. And we get so used to this dependency syndrome that's so rife on the continent when someone else is expected to do for us. And so I think for me, resourcefulness is really, digging deep within yourself and saying, I'm wired with success. As Napoleon Hill will say, you have the success consciousness embedded inside of you, but how do we tap into it? And I think it's our responsibility as leaders to really make sure we're taking our people on a journey to understand that we all are resourced. And we just need to figure out, how do we understand what those resources are? How do we understand what are the assets that we have? And then how do we use that well in order to do the thing you want to do? And whatever that could be, like overcome poverty, or whether it is launch a new business, or have self-sustainability in a business or in an organization. And so I think, from my perspective, just thinking about resourcefulness, it's that success consciousness that comes to mind for me.
Thank you very much. I think the same question will be legged out to De Souza. Mrs. De Souza, I would like to hear from you as far as well. How do you comprehend that question, which is crucial for all entrepreneurs in Africa and all over the world, of course?
Hi, Eric. I hope you can all hear me okay. Please go ahead and just call me Nike.
Okay.
So it's been great listening to everyone and just learning all day. My goodness, I've been taking notes, and I commend all the prize winners. It's been great just listening to your own practical experiences as well. So thank you all very much for that. So I'm someone that's very passionate about the social impact space. I spend a great deal of my time now consulting and providing advisory services to nonprofits, to foundations, to social enterprises here in the UK, where I'm currently based, but I also do work across sub-Saharan Africa as well. But also here, because I'm a co-founder of Teach for Nigeria. It's a 2-year youth leadership. And we are obviously trying to address SDG 4 and educational inequity. So that's the background that I also bring to this conversation. But I think for me, when we look at resourcefulness, I say that from my own experience, my extensive years of working and consulting, that any business model, my background is obviously around strategy, operational modeling, etc. But any business model that you have that is built around a scarce resource is not scalable. So if we're sitting on a resource and is scarce, and you're running a social enterprise or a nonprofit based on scarce human resources, scarce financial resources, etc., it is highly unlikely you're going to be able to scale. And I believe that we all set up our organizations because we want to grow, we want to scale, we want to be sustainable, we want to have greater impact. And so if we're therefore building all that around scarcity, then really and truly you've got to question your business model again and question how resourceful you are as an organization, as a leader, as a founder. And if I look at some of the things that also support resourcefulness, it would be around systems, structures, having clear set of strategies. That most often we're so focused on the external impact going out into the communities, but a lot of us actually don't spend enough time looking at the organizational level, the internal workings of our organization that allows us to have those structures and those systems so that we can be resourceful and we can mobilize resources effectively. So from my perspective, that's what I see.
Thank you very much. As well, Fabrice, I would like to hear from you.
Yeah, well,
what is your picture of resourcefulness?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. First of all, let me commend this opportunity. I've been able to check in from time to time in the day, listening to what's happening. This is amazing. You know, it's like there's a moment it was 100+ people, you know, so I've not seen this for a long time, you know, and it means a lot for Africa. It really means hope. It means as well we're resourceful. Fabrice Muchiga is my name, and I sit in the intersection of governance, peace building, system change, and education. Over the last 15 years, I've been support social entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs across Africa and Europe, mostly with Ashoka, you know, and currently I serve as director for network engagement for Teach for All. I think that Nika should know what Teach for All is. Yeah. So, and good job of Teach for Nigeria. So, resourceful. What is it for me? I think there's really these quotes that really define it for me in Africa. You know, it goes. Do I recall even that quote? Yeah. So you don't need to limit your challenge, but you challenge your limits. You know, and what really this means to me, connected to even what Sherry mentioned, it's, you know, being able to really untap, you know, what is really almost appear to be a challenge, you know, turn them into opportunities. But I know we hear this really quite a lot. But in simple terms, it's really being able to define what a resource is and understanding that you yourself, you're a resource. If you are able to think, your thinking can be a resource. It's your ability to dissociate, you know, the resource to some external factors, you know, resource to money from some other people, but coming back again to, you know, the social settings, you know, the people you know. And I'm really loving this topic because most of the time in some of the sessions I've been, you know, facilitating, one of the key points has always been around, you know, helping people identify a resource. But you'll always find people who will fail to identify themselves, their society, their all networks, you know. So being resourceful is really leveraging what you have as resource, which means your ability to define the resources become key. You know, of course, financial resources are there, material and social, like your own connection, the people you know. You know, so being resourceful to me, Dr. Franck, is really being able to really unlock and tap into the resource that you yourself you are, the people around you, and what you have. That's what being resourceful for me.
Thank you very much. So in sum up, from all I've heard from my panelists, it's like combining your resilience and your efficiency. Good. So what could be the importance of being resourceful? Ladies, sorry, but I will start from the main this time. Yes, Fabrice? Go ahead, please. What could be the importance of it?
Yeah, I think that the importance of being resourceful, it's really give you a sense of possibility and security. Because when you're not resourceful, you'll always look for solution outside, you know, and we're living hard times, especially on our continent. And the hard times we're living where certain countries, and we've seen really that in so many places, where we expect the salvation and the support coming from abroad, a decision by, I don't know, a certain king to come and provide some of the resources for our own development, for our own communities, you know. But then we never really take into account what we have already. I'll give you an example. Currently, for example, we have so many internal displaced people who are being supported with the UNHCR across the continent. But for any meat, any wheat product they consume, it has to come from the US or from Brazil. You know, it doesn't mean that the refugees in Chad, there's no meat in Chad. Actually, there's a lot of meat in Chad, or there's no meat in Kenya. Those resources are really present. But there's an element of really the resourcefulness, and how do we really put that forward when it comes to, you know, even the negotiation. The key challenge is when we, and even the key opportunities, the need of knowing, of being resourceful. When you know what you have as a resource, when you know who you are and consider yourself as a resource, you stand for it. You know, you put that weight on the balance. And that really makes a big difference. And I really believe it really helps, not only for self-positioning, you know, but also for achieving some of your own goals, be it on food security, be it on your own development, because it does not make sense that we have as a continent, we produce the hugest part of natural resources, but the products that will be made after, nothing will come to the continent. I come from the Congo, and I lived, I've been spent half of my life almost in the Congo. And in the country, I was almost killed 2 times by bullets that were not produced in the Congo, And then the key thinking that I know is that we're living in a time now where we're talking, for example, about electric vehicles. All the materials are in Africa. All the resources to make an EV in Africa. In order for you to make an EV, you need 6 times more minerals. And all these minerals are there in Africa. But when you go, for example, into the continent itself, you realize that, for example, you find in Africa, not somebody from Angola or Nigeria or Kenya, or somebody from Mongolia working from the US or for China. So it really questions to what extent we are able to leverage our own resources as a continent. And I really believe that it's really time that we acknowledge and we understand why it's critical to be resourceful, why it matters. And it's not enough to know that. What really matters when you know it, it's to position yourself, as an entrepreneur, as a country, and increase your value. We can no longer afford selling cheap when we know how resourceful we are. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My dear Cheryl, would you let us know practically what kind of method and mindset a team could be staying in order to show adaptability and creativity in terms of constraining period? Let me reframe it. When being a hard time, how could somebody showing his capability of being efficient through resourcefulness?
Thank you for the question. So I'm going to do a quick disclaimer. I'm double booked at the moment, so I had a hard stop at 10 past. So I'm going to say this and then I might drop off. So I do apologize. I think when I think about what makes a team adaptable, I think the thing that comes to mind is Alvin Toffler's quote that says, "The future belongs to those who can learn, unlearn, and relearn." And I think that, a team, if it's going to remain agile, and I think given AI and how things are changing, like by the moment, I think that's really where the value lies. Are you staying in a moment of saying, can I unlearn what didn't serve me before? Can I learn some new things? And can I stay ahead of the curve? And I think for me, with my team at Reasonate and other teams I've led before, that is really where I keep them centered, is to say, I don't ever want to hear you say, we don't do it in that way. It was never done like that before. I think that's the death of a team. I think it's the death of a person when you can close your mind off to possibilities. And so for me, it's really, keeping people centered to say, are you relearning? Are you really looking at how you're making yourself most valuable, like Fabrice has shared? And I think for me, that's really how I keep my team on their toes to say, we don't have to do anything in the same way twice. We can constantly try new things and stay creative and innovative. And I do think that the future belongs to us who are willing enough to be maybe humble enough to say, I don't really know, but I'm willing to learn. And I think it's keeping that teachability, that learnability mindset. That's really where resourcefulness lies.
Great. Nikki, that's your turn for the ball. Can you share an example from education where constraints drove innovation? Like in a huge situation, how could somebody come out with an innovative idea and pursuing a dream to make it like a source of resourcefulness used not only for himself, but for an organization too? Sorry, could you unmute your mic? Your microphone is muted, please.
Sorry about that. I thought I was
Okay.
unmuted. But yeah, no, I was just thanking Cheryl because what she just said now really resonated with me, I must say, at that sort of team and individual and self level. But yeah, so Erick, when you mentioned, obviously my background also being in education, co-founding Teach for Nigeria. So I use Teach for Nigeria as an example. You will recall during the COVID pandemic that across the world, children couldn't go to school. Nobody could go to school. We were all locked in. And so you had a global education crisis where, I mean, for terms, children couldn't access education. A lot of people across the world were obviously, perhaps in the global north, were deploying technology solutions, etc., etc. But the reality across the African continent is that we have a continent that has the context is different. Communities in poverty in certain communities and regions, obviously. We also have a continent that the rate of electricity deployment is also very low. Obviously, some countries have high deployment, some countries don't. In Nigeria, our rural areas and many of our communities didn't have access to electricity. And yet, at the same time, children globally couldn't go to school. So we made a decision during that period to assess this situation. So scarcity of resource. So the reality is there are no schools, there are no teachers, there is no education. So, but we are a youth movement that deals with education inequity. 20 million children currently are out of school in Nigeria. It's just staggering. And those that are in school are not really learning at the level that they should be, which is why we Teach for Nigeria was formed. But it got even worse during the COVID period, the pandemic, because it meant that children who weren't learning were now in a crisis. They were definitely out of school for significant periods. We then decided that this opportunity was very challenging. What can we do about it? So obviously we came up with solutions where there was very little electricity. We could not deploy technology into homes and into houses. So what was the solution to continue to get children educated? During that period, we decided that what was that one tool that was obvious across the continent? I don't know about you guys, but if there's any crisis, any point, you see everybody listening to the radio, right? So across Africa, everybody's on the radio. Your BBC News, no matter where you are, rural areas, urban areas, everybody's on the radio. And then it became so obvious that here we are, we had a resource, a simple thing as radio communication, right? And obviously we had fellows, we have our young leaders who are in our fellowship, we have a few thousands now. And so that created the teacher pool that we needed, right? And so we thought, okay, what we could do is to launch a radio school during the pandemic. This was the innovation. It wasn't about deploying technology. It wasn't about all these things that people who are poor, disadvantaged, underserved cannot access this. So what could we do to scale? So we set up a radio school. We went into partnership with state governments in Nigeria. We went in partnership with some radio stations, and we used the pandemic period to run what we call the radio school. The radio school allowed us, Teach for Nigeria, to teach using the radio. We had lessons through the radio. People in rural areas, etc., could access learning throughout the COVID period. We reached over 5 million children that we would not have reached in a normal, non-COVID period. This showed us that if you're thrown challenges, you can sit back, strategically think about how do you deploy your limited resources? What is the different way of thinking? Something that wasn't working before, how can you re-engineer that and come up with something else? And that was what we would, one of the solutions that we had in the innovations. I just thought I'd use that as an example of a simple innovation in a context of an area where there was no light, no electricity, etc., and people couldn't go to school. But we reached far more people during the COVID period with learning and education than we had before. And we have continued now, subsequent to that, to run a radio school across Nigeria.
Thank
Erick,
you very much, Nike.
Yes, I hope that's a good enough example.
It was an amazing example. Unfortunately, it seems like we've lost Jacob. So I will continue with our dear brother Fabrice. What was the turning point that made it success? As you know, when you're out of the limitation, provide an example showing, like as done Nike, and show us the success point from it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I've said, this has really been, it's been a big really thing for me. You know, like I said at the beginning, I grew up in a certain settings in the Congo with this unending conflict. As much as I joined Teach for All some time back, as much as I had, you know, I've been working for the last 15, years around social entrepreneurship, there's really one key element that really never stopped to burden me, is why does violence continues in my community? You know, I've been in a situation whereby every call I receive was about the number of people dead or which other place the conflict continues, And then the problem is not really only the problems that only the Congo has conflict, but this has taken so long, and it has been mostly about natural resources, And then I kept questioning, if the question is natural resources, why is that communities are turning against one another? So we've really been in a situation whereby we see communities really turning against one another, So one of the key things that I really decided was really to take action. And I was like, hey, there's nothing that I can, there's no way I'll continue remaining really silent when the situation continue this way. Nevertheless, it will never give you peace of mind. So at that time, I created the Africa Peace Initiative, which I am proud to also co-lead currently. And one of the key challenges that we have, and that's really why I mentioned at the beginning, the idea of looking at resourcefulness from the perspective of your own resources, from yourself and the people around you, that allow you not to necessarily focus from what's come out from outside. It could be a plus when it supports your vision. And at this given moment, we really wanted, with the Africa Peace Initiative, we really wanted to create an opportunities where we look at peace from a human perspective, where you and I, a person from this community and the other community, can really sit together and understand what are some of the issues, what is really dividing us. Agree together to disagree and go together in terms of how can we, promote even the living together. And this is really without really looking at the resources, because the resources is a huge scapegoat, that is being used into the conflict. So the story short is, when we went into looking at, and our mindset was like, we need this big donor who will give us the resources for this. And eventually, when we pitched the idea in several places, we got a lot of support, and unfortunately, the support we got was extremely conditional. We signed, for example, an agreement with some German, the French, and we were ready to implement, And then what's really happened was, like, when we're in the middle now, we're doing everything. So we saw ourselves being imposed an agenda on how do we need to bring this? How do we need to, move forward with this? And it has been a huge challenge for myself, as a person who grew up in the same conflict. My first work, I worked supporting children, get out of armed groups. And the work I was doing really shaped the person I became, because we were doing some work, of course, that makes the donor happy, but it was perpetuating the same conflict, perpetuating some inequalities. So the limitation now, I really knew, together with my team, that it was really right to have systems in place that allow not only people to come together and their voice to be heard, but we had a donor who wanted us to have, this fancy conference where we have people from all over come and speak and go, but nothing sustainable. And we knew we needed the resources, but we took this decision to decline the offer. It was in the midst of really everything, in the time of tension in Goma and Bukavu. So one of the things we did then, we knew we had mobilized communities and people were waiting. So, the big question we had was like, where will the resources be coming from? And one of the things we did then, we went back again to the same communities, and we tried to explore what is that we can do, to bring again these people together. And we did, and we came to realize that some of even the plans we had before, were even extremely expensive. So the community came up with some of the solutions in Goma, in Bukavu, and some of the Rwandan region. People suggested spaces, and we brought community. We brought some few people from Goma and Bukavu all the way in one place.
Sorry for the inconvenience. Networking is deciding in a different manner to stop, my dear Fabrice. And I think we're also close to the ending time. So the final takeaway will be you should share an advice, like a helpful advice, a deep-in advice, which could help a young entrepreneur in that situation. In the context of being resourcefulness.
So, Erick, it looks like I'm the last one, the last man here, literally. But
yes,
so let me, just in case Fabrice is able to come back as well.
Oh,
I think he's back.
Is he, Fabrice?
Yes, Fabrice, welcome back.
Yeah, thank you. So sorry, guys. So one thing very direct, Dr. Erick.
Yep.
There's a lot of power in communities. A lot of power in communities. The key things that most of the time, we tend to dwell in some of the models that we learned in university or that we experience in the West, and I really believe, and I came to realize that no matter the challenge, just bring it back to the community. Forget about their level of education. See these communities as power. And you will not need to be resourceful because these communities are, and sometimes you really, even sometimes the way of thinking that you bring into the community, it's too expensive for you, but for them, it's really simple. Sometimes they might even question, why are you not doing it this way? So I think we need to be leveraging more our communities, and not to really consider education, even the formal education being a limitation, So I think that will be one of the key things that has been able to help us in the Africa Peace Initiative, overcome the big challenge we had with, donors for the activities and what the Africa Peace Initiative is doing currently.
So in short, to quickly sum up, is we shouldn't confuse ourselves with adaptation and adaptability. We should rather go for adaptability, which is trying to do as it is done by combining the knowledge you've already got somewhere else and making it working within the community where you are, from the community, for the community, and with the community.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, my dear Fabrice. And let's jump back to Nikki. She started speaking and then you drove back. So sorry, Nikki. The floor is now
Sorry,
yours.
Nikke,
No
this
worries.
technology, Nikke.
I wanted Fabrice to finish his awesome feedback as well. So yeah. So as a closing for me, I think that I would take it a little bit slightly different from an organizational level is the fact that we've talked a lot today about resources and resourcefulness, but that can only work in the context of some specific things that needs to happen at the organizational level. I'm assuming as founders, as leaders, that we understand the importance and the relevance of things around strategic planning, very much having a strategy around the use of our resources. Obviously, linking the impact of the work that we're trying to do and the resources and the link to how you're going to get that impact. We must never forget that. There needs to be a structure, a set of systems, processes that enable you to have that impact and help you to use the resources that you have and help you to mobilize those resources. So I emphasize again, strategy, strategic planning. Planning is so key. Making sure that, reference again to that, the skill sets of creativity, thinking outside the box, looking at, the limited resources we might have and trying to turn that into something that can give you great impact. And then how you can increase those resources that you need, whether it's human capital, financial capital, or as Fabrice has said consistently, is around what you have, the social networks within your community. Those are all part of the resources that we have. Thanks, Erick.
Thank you very much, Nikki. Fabrice, your final takeaway, your advice for such to be working properly.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, thanks so much for this topic, because I really believe that this is timely. This is what Africa needs. And I think we need to find ways, how do we embrace this? So that, and again, thanks ASEW really for having this. My biggest takeaway will be really looking at three things. The first is really the idea of self, which is really connected to the topic. When we speak about resourcefulness, always look at yourself, look within. And within means, being really holistic about the you. We need a better you for a better world, a better you for a better your own organization, a better your dreams and so on. That means your mental wellness, your physical fitness and wellness as well. That means as well what you eat, your exercise and so on. You know best how to do that. The second thing is really around, other than the first, yourself, it's really a lot of discipline about it. The second is about the network. As much as we talk about the self, we live in times when networks have power. And I really believe one of the key things that this summit will achieve is really connecting people. I really saw a lot of things, in some of the sessions, and I'm really eager to follow up. I hope ADM will be kind enough to send us some of the links as well. So the networking is key. So many of the challenges you face and we face, you cannot solve them alone, but come back, leverage the people you met here, and they really even, help you in many ways. And I think the last point to me is, the discipline of execution. As much as you can be resourceful, if you don't have this discipline of execution, is really, really key. And I call it discipline because, it's almost a system. It's almost understanding how you work, how you operate, but of course, how other people work. There are people who are very productive if you start your day quite early. It means for you to execute, you need to maybe start your day early. It means, for example, what Nikki was mentioning, the idea and understanding of strategic planning. What are you planning for? I read a book when a gentleman was saying that, you know, sometimes 10 minutes of planning save you more than an hour in your execution. You know, so planning is key in this element of discipline, you know, understanding how your time work. But also, lastly, will be for me when you want to be resourceful, you really must value one of the most important resource we have on the planet. That is your time. And respecting it does not only mean that you are there on time, but also you allow nobody, whoever it is, to not respect your time. Because whoever doesn't respect your time, they don't respect your life. And you gotta be resourceful. And I think that's why we are here on this summit, to remind ourselves our call to be resourceful. Africa needs us to be resourceful. And thanks again for really bringing this conversation, you know, about Africa resourcefulness and entrepreneurs resourcefulness. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So let's sum up. Keywords: know yourself, know your environment, trying to focus, being, stable in whatever you want to do, but also a little bit flexible by developing adaptability, not adaptation. And self-respect by respecting others. And finally, keep on focusing again. Structurize yourself, organize yourself, and it will impact others and organization. My dear and pleasant panelists, I would like to take the assertiveness to say a great thank you to all of you.